Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Patterson Report. I'm Brandon. He's Ryan. And if it seems like I am in a little bit of a better mood this week than I have previously, it's because I think we finally saw what this Eagle team can be. And it is refreshing. It's what we were sold in the offseason. I think it's Kellen Moore running the show. And there's reason to be really hopeful. Obviously we've all seen the clips. Saquon has been worth every penny and more. But I mean, you look even deeper. Jalen Hurts looks like 2022 Jalen Hurts. Last year and early this year, he couldn't really figure out the deep ball. But I remember it. Like in 2022, I mean, he can throw a really nice deep ball. And you saw it this game with an absolute dot to Devontae Smith. He made a hell of a play on the ball. Saquon's first touchdown was another great touch pass. Like Jalen Hurts looks comfortable. He's dealing, and everyone's getting involved. I mean, AJ Brown, you lose during the game, but sucks. But then Smitty comes up and makes one of the best catches we've seen an Eagles receiver make in the last 2 or 3 seasons, outdoing Jahan Dotson just a quarter earlier. It was fun to see. Like everybody got involved.
It was fun to see. It was, an overall good game with, the amount of coaching lapses that there was throughout the game. You could point to several. It's one of those teams where they've been saying it on talk shows all week. The talent's there. The coaching might hold them back, and I am a firm believer in that one. The coaching might hold them back.
Yeah, Nick, this was a masterclass in everything that's wrong with Nick Sirianni as the head coach. I mean, you look at it's funny. Like I thought the players played. I thought one of their best games this season. I mean that Eagle team should have cruised to. I mean, God, I'm thinking on the top of my head. I mean that should have been the 30, like at least 35 points. I think that team should have had. But Nick Sirianni was awful. I mean, how do you take points off the board after an extra point? You never take points off the board under any circumstances. Jake Elliott must have banged his wife at some point. It's the only rationale I can think of to why we have one of the highest paid and best kickers in football, and we pretend like we're running a high school offense and refuse to use them. It's fair to say that the tush push probably has gotten figured out to an extent. You look at just kind of the way our line has changed, and that's a play predicated on leverage. And I love Mekhi Becton. I think he's done a sensational job. You have a mountain playing guard. That changes everything with the tush push. So you can't just, every 2-point conversion can't be the tush push. Going for it inside the 50, regardless of the scenario, is insane. I mean, that's an easy 3 points for Jake. If I'm doing the math quickly here in my head, I think he cost his football team 8 points.
Yeah, I get behind that number. It's about that. Give or take a few, maybe. It stinks, man, because this team should be viewed at so much higher than they actually are. Like, it's a great collection of players. It's just every single game, man, it just feels like something's going on that shouldn't be.
Yeah, I mean, and look around the NFL. I mean, I think. Look, we can all kind of get on the same page here that Detroit looks like the toughest team to beat in football right now. I mean, they're playing really well. Their run game is sensational. Dan Campbell is who Nick Sirianni wishes he was. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's a gunslinger head coach. He takes some ill-advised chances, but he's nowhere near as reckless as Nick. So Detroit's in the class of their own, but I think outside of them, every team has flaws. And I think roster-wise, production-wise, like between the two white lines, I like the Eagles as much as anybody. But you're right. They have this huge wild card in that their coach can insert himself into the game at any moment. And that's what's keeping us from being in those conversations. Dan Orlovsky said they're the only playoff team with serious head coaching concerns.
I see that as a total truth because, man, it's just mistake after mistake after mistake, and then he yells at the fans and just antics after antics, bringing your kids into the post game presser. Like it's always just something. Like it's a distraction for sure. I don't know if the players, yeah. You see one moment where he's doing that stuff, and then you see the next moment where he's sitting on the sideline with Saquon telling him, "Oh yeah, you should get more. It's against your former team, Like it's just so weird. I can't really quantify it.
I think he's a good dude. Like I mean, the players love him for a reason, and I think the football locker room's a really tough place to lie and be phony. So I don't think that's the case. I think he really cares about the guys. I think he really cares about his job. I just think that he can't. He still doesn't understand the line between aggressive and reckless, and too often he wanders into reckless. And when you couple that with kind of the bravado and all that you see from him on the sideline, I can see where people can definitely misinterpret that as selfish, because it almost looks like he wants to win because of him. Where you could play it safe, let the players win, and call it a day. It's almost like in every game he's searching for that genius head coach moment.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's like last week, it was at the detriment to your own team.
Yeah, and it's always just one of those things where if you're losing the team this many points consistently, you got to take a step back and look in the mirror, which I hope he's done at this point, because his coordinators are kind of bailing him out on all levels right now. It's what it feels like with the play calling, the defense playing exceptional. Like it's kind of what it feels like. Like his coordinators were brought in to save his job, and they're saving his job as the season goes on. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like 22 again for all the right and wrong reasons. Obviously 22, you have Shane Steichen, who I loved as an OC. I still think, and I think Kellen Moore is doing a really good job. He's taken the team in a bit of a different direction, but it's the right one. You have Saquon Barkley. You should be a run-first team. But with all that said, I mean, that offense under Steichen in 22 was one of the most explosive Eagle offenses I can remember seeing. I mean, that team could put up points in bunches. This team isn't that. They're efficient. So it's just a different way of looking at it. I think Vic Fangio could take Jonathan Gannon's lunch money as a defensive coordinator. I was skeptical at first. I think it took him a while to put in this system. But since he's got the guys kind of bought into it, I mean, it's been just virtuoso performance after virtuoso performance week in and week out. And he's doing it with, I mean, he's got a talented defense, but he's doing it with young guys who needed to prove themselves. Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean, who we'll spend some time on, I'm sure. Dual rookie corners. Like, it's what he's doing this with is pretty incredible.
Yeah, I mean, with the personnel that he has, and he's gotten the best out of almost all of these guys, save for
Except for CJ GJ.
Yeah, save for a few names that we could get back to at another time. But Cooper DeJean's been incredible at the slot corner. He's come along great after his injury in camp, and he had to miss some time, but he learned along the way, it feels like, because he's been incredible in the slot. Quinyon Mitchell's been shutting everyone down on the outside, and then the linebackers. Somehow Howie always does this. He lucks into this every once in a while, or he finds this hidden gem at linebacker that nobody wants. Then, wham! He's just playing at I wouldn't say an all-pro level, but he's been playing at a Pro Bowl level or higher. I mean, it's been absolutely insane to see the development of Zach Bond over these few weeks. I believe, if I'm not wrong, you could check me on this, but the Eagles had the 2 highest graded linebackers last week. That's crazy for what our expectations were for this unit, for how they're performing. Incredible.
Yeah. And I mean, look, neither guy was expected to be anything close to this. You got to figure we had Zach Bond, converted edge, played a little bit of linebacker towards the end there with New Orleans. But definitely wasn't what he is now. I mean, he was brought in to kind of be a depth piece at linebacker, and hope to God we could fit him in to the starting two at some point. And then the Kobe Dean, just about everybody in Philadelphia is ready to give up on. I'm obviously honest, myself included, a little bit. I thought after 2 seasons of getting some pretty solid playing time, not being able to stay healthy, not being able to make an impact, when we came into the season with Vaughn and Dean at linebacker, we talked on this show. We were like, dude, another year with this shit. You go out and get Devin White, who was a shell of himself, and then he breaks camp with the team, but barely. And you're just kind of wondering, what did they see in camp with Vaughn and Dean? And I got to tell you, they were pretty much right from the get-go. From game one, Vaughn was different. And it didn't take Dean too much longer. First week, I don't remember how his stat line went, but I know every week he's gotten significantly better. And that pick in the end zone was one of the best linebacker picks you're ever going to see.
Man, absolutely incredible stuff from Nakobe Dean. The talent's always been there. The reason he fell in the draft was injury concerns. It was always about injury. It was never about, did he have enough talent to play at the next level? There was never really a discussion about that. And now we're seeing he's on the field full time and he's improving every week. And, sometimes you just got to get those reps. Like I equated to quarterback last week. Sometimes you just got to go through the ups and downs. You know what you signed up for. Obviously, Howie knew what he signed up for by not addressing the position this offseason all too highly. But here we are, and they're both playing great. And what more can you honestly ask for at this point? Because the defense seems to be, I wouldn't say overperforming, but it seems to be defying people's expectations. Those are the right words that I'm looking for that scenario.
Yeah, and you got to think, from how god-awful this defense was through the first 3 weeks, they've been so good since that I believe, I think we're the only team, maybe it's one of a short list, but I thought we were the only where you have an offense and defense both inside the top 10 performance-wise in the NFL, which, when you remember how terrible that defense was, to the point where you had alumni like Fletcher Cox publicly saying he was embarrassed for what the Eagles defense had become. That's just how locked down they've been since, I want to say it was since week 3 when we started turning things around. And then on offense, you and I talked about it during the game, the last 2 games. You just felt like you didn't see enough of Devontae. And, you have this reliance on Saquon, this reliance on A.J. Brown. And I know Hurts and A.J. Brown are boys and all that good stuff. But whenever you need them, it's like in the fourth quarter, they remember they have Devontae Smith. This guy really only sees targets for 1 quarter a game. And you look at the numbers he's still putting up. I just think he's got to be an even bigger part of the game plan going forward.
You know what I equate this to? It's perfect using the Eagles team. It's like one of Batman's villains running around the city for a couple hours, and then the Gotham PD remembering, oh hey, we have the bat signal, flashes that thing, and then it's a pass to Devontae. That's how I kind of equate that scenario, because it does seem like that, but he's a stud. He gets paid all this money, and of course he comes up when we need him to. But it just feels like Hurts does favor AJ Brown, but Devontae Smith is always there in the clutch. And of course, we've seen that with the catch he had this past week, and he just shows it every week. I saw a tweet. It's like, I sit down and I remember sometimes that, wow, the Eagles have 2 top receivers in the league, but the Eagles sometimes don't remember that, and sometimes they just gotta take the time to do that and remember that.
That's kind of how it feels. Hurts looks for him. You're right. It's only when the back's up against the wall does he look for him. Fourth quarter when you absolutely need it. And then he's got to be, and there's no way to find this stat, but he and Wes Welker, and I guess Julian Edelman are the only names that come to my mind when I think of this guy, but they have to be the smallest quarterback safety nets in football. Because typically third down in a standard offense, you're looking for your big body receiver or you're looking for your tight end to get 5, 6, 7 yards, whatever it might be. Jalen Hurts looks for Devontae Smith. He's their answer on third down when shit's hitting the fan and they need somebody to bail them out. Which is just so interesting because that's just not. He's small body, quick, kind of take the top off receiver. But yeah, I mean, he's the guy I trust the most in third down. It's like if someone has to win off the line on a slant, give it to Devontae. I know AJ Brown's bigger hands, stronger. I mean, he's a freak. There's just Devontae just gets it done every time.
He's consistent, and you know, football teams need guys like that they could turn to on third down, like you said, big body guy. But in our case, it's Devonta. The city of Philadelphia is historically unconventional. It feels like Kyle Schwarber hitting leadoff at DH, Devontae Smith, one of your small wide receivers, getting it on third down. Like we just don't do it like other cities. That's what I think. But anyway, we have to talk about another team soon, which I'm not looking forward to too much.
Yeah, everything was good in Eagle Land for the most part. I know we complained about Sirianni, but small potatoes in the grand scheme of things. We're 6-2. Revenge win in a sense over Doug. Nothing but love for Doug, though. It looks like a revenge win. But across the parking lot, the roof is on fire at the Wells Fargo Center. Look, we knew once they told us that Joel and PG were going to miss a little bit of extended time, you kind of had a feeling we were going to get off to a bumpy start. Now, did I expect 1-6? No. I thought this team was built better than that outside of Joe and PG. But find me any other team in the NBA and take away two of their stars, it's going to be a bumpy start. That's not even the thing I'm most concerned about, honestly. Is the fact today, Tyrese Maxey, you find out hamstring injury. They're saying 2 weeks. I don't believe them. I've been a Sixers fan for too long. I'm not expecting to see Tyrese Maxey back till December. So that's just the way that it is. I'm fine with it. I'd rather him come back healthy because hamstrings tend to linger. So now, look, in November, it's going to be Paul George for a little while. And based on how he looked in his debut, that's a scary proposition. He looked rusty. He was inefficient, a lot of turnovers that played towards the end of the game. He even admitted he didn't understand what the score was. Like, just not what you want for your debut with a new team. And, I mean, I don't know when we see Joe. I really just don't. You got to tack on 3 more games for this suspension, which was completely undeserved. We can get into that if you'd like. But I don't know when we're going to see him. I truly think it could be at least another week, maybe week and a half.
Yeah, I mean, we could dive into that, but I don't know when we're going to see him either. Like you said, tack on 3 games. It's just we're struggling, and of course, our pick is top 6 protected. I don't think we could afford to waste a season with this core, honestly.
No, you can't play for the draft.
You can't play for the draft.
Plus, you got a lot of 1-year deals or expiring deals.
I'm just saying it's worth bringing up that, hey, the pick is top 6 protected, and it's owed, of course, to the Thunder, who has, 1 billion draft picks at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I mean, we could get into that if you want to, because, man, oh, man, that comment,
look, let's just call it what it is. There was a bullshit article by a bullshit journalist who absolutely hates Philadelphia athletes. If Marcus Hayes has no haters, that means I'm dead. Like, I can't stand that dude. And I'm so frustrated by the fact that he knows what he's doing. It's this bullshit clickbait journalism that he doesn't even believe what he's saying. It's just anger to get a rise out of people, to get his clicks up. And every once in a while, look, you're an athlete in Philadelphia, I'm sure. I mean, all these guys are taught and to have a thick skin and to understand how their media works here. And I get that to a degree. But there has to be a line. And I thought Marcus Hayes clearly and objectively crossed one. I don't think anybody has the right to bring up, another person's family, especially in relation to sports. It's not that deep, let alone somebody's deceased family. So I thought it was great what Joel Embiid did. I thought it was great what Jason Kelce did. I think at some point here we have to reintroduce the fact that if you say something horrible about somebody online or to their face, there has to be repercussions at some point. I think it's absolutely bullshit that Joel got a 3-game suspension, Marcus Hayes got absolutely nothing, and that the Inquirer, and for right now, the Sixers. Now, they can stop this, but I haven't heard anything yet. He will continue to be allowed to cover the Sixers beat. It is simply insane. And while we're on the subject, a big fuck you to Daryl Morey and Elton Brand for apologizing to Marcus Hayes on the Sixers' behalf. They had nothing to apologize for.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. It's such a slippery slope. I can't speak. I'm gonna get my blood pressure up, and I can't afford to do that. But it's one of those things where if you're an athlete, you could criticize him on the court all you want, say he's not doing enough in the post, or he didn't improve his 3-point game, whatever. Like, okay, I get it. But when you start talking about dead brothers, family members, dude, come on, like that's stooping so low, and you should consider something else, man. Like, come on, I'm trying to find words, but I'm gonna word bomb it because I'm just angry. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm glad Joel did what he did. Like I said, I'm
justified.
It was absolutely justified.
Justified was the word.
And the 3-game suspension is what it is. I get that the league can't necessarily encourage it, but I'm glad he did what he did. And if you're on Sixers Twitter, which if you're listening to this show, I can't imagine that you're not. That's been the overwhelming reaction. You did the right thing. That there has to be consequences eventually, and this is establishing a line. I hope. Now, there was no consequences for Marcus Hayes, so we'll see how that shakes out. But look, I'm not. I mean, I'm probably a smaller guy than Marcus Hayes. I don't know what he looks like. With that said, Joel is on very high on the list of people I would not want to piss off. Physically imposing, came up learning the game of basketball in Africa, has definitely been through some shit. Like, Joel is very high on the list of guys I'm not messing with. So hopefully that was enough to maybe steer Hayes in a different direction. But so that's the off the court stuff. On the court's equally as bad. On the court is where I think Joel deserves a little bit of criticism. I think the Sixers organization deserves to get the bulk of it, because I don't know about you. I mean, I know this would be the Sixers are to me, I guess, what the Eagles would be to you in a sense where if Jalen Hurts was injured and they just lie to you time and time and time and time again. The fans are so sick of the Sixers front office lying to us over and over and over. Joel was never going to start the season healthy. Just tell us. Look, he's going to miss the first month. Then everybody adjusts accordingly. But, you want to get the ticket money. There's a reason that the fans love to hate this team, and that's a big part of it. I mean, they're just so dishonest.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't help when people want to go see Joel Embiid for the first time in person, and they're like, he might not play tonight. He might do it, and then he doesn't play. It's just, I see the disdain, and it's perfectly justified. Like, I'm going to use that word a ton tonight because a lot of these things are justifiable.
Yeah.
But man, just tell us, hey, 2 to 3 weeks. All right, got it. I'll start looking at tickets for 2 to 3 weeks. Like.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking. Like, I agree with the plan. I don't think Joel should be playing basketball right now. If he's not healthy, I don't want him on the court. But, I mean, you don't get to play both sides against the middle. You got to be honest with the fans and tell them when they expect the greatest center in Sixers history to be on the court. That's a pretty fair ask.
I mean, there's a lot of fair asks in these sports, and they, just some of it. I don't want to get into examples because I don't want to poke any bears tonight because there's some examples out there. But anyway, they're struggling. The plan is to probably sneak into the Eastern Conference playoffs as of right now as a lower seed, and just hope Embiid's healthy and does damage there because like that feels like the ceiling at this point.
Yeah. So I mean, the nice thing for us is, as bad as it's been, we are 3 games out of the 3 spot because the East as a whole has been putrid. There's only 2 teams above 500, and that is Boston and Cleveland, who look like they're going to run away with the division. So coming into today, I still thought this is a top 5 team. We got time. The East is bad. We're going to be all right. Then you lose Tyrese Maxey for a month, and that changes a lot. Uh, Depending on when you get Joe back, depending on how quickly Paul George rounds in the form, this team could be coming into the back half of November as one of the bottom 2 teams in the East, and then they've pretty much erased any grace period they might have had, which is going to be tough. I mean, look, Joel's been hurt most of the preseason. PG was the same way. These guys don't have court time together. So most of these teams, you would take October and November, play just about 500 ball, and understand that you're building team chemistry. When you put the team together and you're, 10 games below 500 at that point, you don't have that luxury anymore. I don't know what it looks like, but you got to play winning basketball right away. So Nick Nurse has his work cut out. I think he's done as good of a job as he can do with what he's been given. The only thing that concerns me a little bit is he's starting to develop a little bit of a Doc Rivers syndrome where, look, we're a bad basketball team right now. If there's a time to get the young guys run, it's now. Jared McCain needs to be a bigger part of that lineup because you're going to use him later. Eric Gordon might help this team later on down the line, but if he's cold, he's already a pro. He knows how to play the game. You've got to get Jared McCain those minutes. Yabusele, same thing. He had one of the best games. He had the best game of his NBA career 2 nights ago. Last night he plays 10 minutes. Those are the guys where if you're going to be bad, and while you're going to be bad, those are the times to get those guys hot, get them comfortable, get them in the system. That way, when Joe, PG, Tyrese, everybody's back and running, you're not bringing anybody along. Everybody's already kind of on pace.
Yeah. It's tough because you have to do so many things in such little time. And then we didn't even mention that you mentioned the teams, but Cleveland looks great right now. Boston looks unbeatable at this point.
Yeah.
It feels like they're going to run the table again, and so be it. But
they're going to be tough.
They're going to be really tough, and you need to get the chemistry to take on those guys, and that's just we've seen the collapses in the past. We're used to it at this point. I don't even think this current team, like how it is, with the guys back, it's just such a tough matchup for Boston. Like, I know we're looking so far into the future, but you have to. With a team with playoff aspirations that are this deep as the Sixers. And of course, it's just tough, man. It's a really tough outlook right now for the team, but I think the season can be saved if Joel comes back and, this team mends. And like you said, 500 ball. I mean, you have to play close to it because there's going to be such a hill to climb, but I think the ceiling for the regular season is sneak in as a 7-8 or in the play-in, and then try to do as much damage as you can when you get in there. That's honestly the ceiling for this team.
That's what it's starting to look like. I mean, again, it depends on what the rest of the East does and how quickly we get Joe back. If we get him back next week, and it depends on what he looks like. If he comes back in form, then I think this team can do what they did last year early. Because you saw how good this team was with just Joe and Tyrese. So if we have just Joe and PG, I think it's going to be a really good basketball team. And I think I would put our ceiling more around the 5 seed if he comes back in shape and ready to go. But if there's a bump, then yeah, I agree. Then you're going to have to play your way from the bottom up. Which Miami's done it. I'm not in a huge hurry to because. I mean, look, it all depends on where you land. If you land on that 8, you got to deal with Boston right out of the gate, and that's the opposite of what you want if you're the Sixers team. You need as much time as possible.
Well, hopefully they win the play-in. Hopefully they win the play-in.
Yeah, that gets you to 7. Yeah,
7.
I'm not in a big hurry to have a date with Cleveland either.
I'm not either, but I feel like they're, in terms of being able to be beat, I feel like Cleveland is way lower than Boston.
Yeah.
That's good. I feel like we could beat them easier.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but I would much rather see if you can get to that 5 seed and you figure things start to even out a little bit. Some teams in play for that. You could be looking at having to play Indiana. I'm all right with that. You could be looking at the Knicks again. Tough series, but again, better than Boston. I mean, the dream scenario would be to get north of 5, and then if you can get to that 4, my thought at the end of the season, you might be able to get Milwaukee because they're stumbling around too. Um, I would love Doc Rivers in the playoffs. I feel great about that matchup. But again, like that's kind of the sweet spot. Like this team's not going to be 1, 2, 3. I don't know who's going to be the 3, but it's not going to be us.
Probably
But
Knicks.
if you can get ahead, if you can get ideally 4, but just at least across that equator where you're not facing a top team first round, it gives us a much better shot because we're going to need as much game time as possible from the time the big 3 plays its first game together till then.
Yep. That's all I can hope for is just building team chemistry because we talked about at the end of last season. It felt like that's what kept them going, like the glue guys, and just how well they mended together. And of course, it didn't end the way we wanted it to, but man,
yeah,
it felt good.
It did, and a lot of I like the way the roster's built. Still, I think they're gonna even this thing out. It's a better team than last year. It's a deeper team than last year. Andre Drummond is going to remember how to play basketball. I think he's pushing it a little bit too much because he's a starter. I think once he's back coming off the bench with a clearly defined role, he's going to be fine. Same thing with a lot of these guys. Like Tyrese has been one of the most inefficient players in basketball to start the season. That's not who he is. He's being forced to put up 30, 40 shots a game. Hill's come back down to the mean. Caleb Martin will get it cooking. He's been quiet. Like it's gonna even out a little bit. It's just a matter of how quickly they can get that straightened out.
Yep. As long as they stay afloat, they'll be fine.
Yeah.
The problem is there's no room. There's no room on the ship. You're stuck in one of those tight, waterways where the ship can't go anywhere except for straight. Hopefully.
I would be ecstatic with 500 by December.
I agree, which is terrifying.
Yeah, but looking at where we are now, I'd be stoked with 500 by December. So we'll see if we get our wish. But for this week, I'm Brandon. He's Ryan. This is a Patson Report, and we'll see you next Thursday.